Hi, my name is Justin and welcome to my channel Nooks Cooks. Today I'm going to bake pandesal, so let's start. Pandesal is a dinner roll style bread. It literally translates in Spanish to bread of salt. Though it does have salt in it, it does tend to be more sweet than it is savory. And traditionally in the Philippines, it's eaten for breakfast. You can eat it at any time of the day. I don't have my own recipe for pandesal, so today I'll be using Kristina Razon's recipe from Serious Eats. So thank you, Kristina. We don't know each other, but maybe one day we will. I'm going to be taking her recipe and I'm going to be tweaking it to what ingredients that I have on hand and the equipment that I'll be using. Also, I'm going to be taking the recipe and multiplying it by 4 because it's a lot of effort to make pandesal or bread in general. So I want to make a lot so I can get my money's worth and my time's worth of making this. So I'll be putting those in the notes of what and how I multiplied those to use the ingredients that I did have. Here are all the ingredients for pandesal, starting with flour. This is bread flour. The recipe calls for all-purpose flour. I'm using bread flour because I just happen to have a lot of it. Bread flour has a higher protein content, making for stronger gluten development, so we're going to see how that turns out today. Milk, eggs, egg yolk, vegetable oil, kosher salt, yeast, sugar, and breadcrumbs. This is my spiral mixer. It's a special dough mixer that I use for baking pizza. I bake a lot of pizzas, so it helps build up really strong gluten. It has 2 independently moving parts. There's the bowl and then there's the spiral dough hook. So when you turn it on, whoops, there's a safety, of course. You gotta put down the guard, and then when you turn it on, you can see that there's 2 parts that are spinning, and this helps build up stronger gluten. Starting with the dry ingredients, I'm going to add bread flour, sugar, active dry yeast, kosher salt, and then I mix it all together. And then I follow it up with the wet ingredients, starting with the eggs. I do the eggs in batches. Egg yolk, and milk. I add the milk a little bit at a time, allowing it to be integrated into the flour. You'll notice over the time that the dough changes and goes through different stages. And lastly, the vegetable oil. I treat it like the milk by adding it a little bit at a time to let it fully integrate into the dough. With a spiral dough mixer, you'll know that you're almost done when you start hearing some slapping sounds and popping sounds, and the dough starts making what's called the pumpkin shape. Because this is a long mix, the dough starts to heat up, and I like to check it with the thermometer. I like to make sure it's between 75 and 80 degrees and not more than 80 degrees Fahrenheit, because then the gluten starts to break down. Okay, it looks like the dough has been building gluten, and you can see it's pretty strong. You know, there's that Windowpane test where you can stretch it out to see light through, and I think we're pretty close to that. all thanks to this mixer. You can do it with a KitchenAid, but it's a lot easier to do it with this. Not necessary, but this is what I like to use. And it's time to take it out. Okay, the dough, I just took it out of the mixer, and by no means do I consider myself a baker. So what I'm just gonna do here is I'm gonna tighten up the dough before I put it in for its first proof. I bake a lot of pizza, so I'm kind of just gonna borrow some of the stuff that I do with my pizza dough with this. So I kind of do a big flip and fold, that way to really tighten up the gluten. I'm just gonna make it into a nice big ball, like so. That way you can see it has this nice taut skin. I'm just gonna take my little dough spatula and really tighten that up, like so. Okay. See, is that getting caught on the camera? So there's the dough ball. Now that the dough ball is tight, I got this big bowl here. Let's oil it up just a little bit. That way it doesn't stick to the edges. It's just a little bit of vegetable oil. Kind of grease this big bowl. And then, kind of like how I do pizza, just gonna put a little bit of vegetable oil on the outside of this dough. That way, it doesn't form a skin or dry out. So, take this ball, plop it into this big bowl here. I'm gonna take this towel. Gonna get it wet with some warm water eventually. Take this towel, make sure it's a little bit warm, wring it out so it's not dripping in water. I'm just gonna like nicely lay it on top of this bowl before we start the proof. And this is just gonna help keep the moisture in the dough while it's proofing. I forgot to show what it looks like in the bowl, so there's the dough right there. Cover it back up again. I'm gonna put it in the oven soon to do the first proof. Not all ovens have a proofing function, but if yours does, make sure to take advantage of it. We're gonna stick the dough in the oven on the proofing setting for probably, I would guess, an hour until the dough doubles in size. What proofing does is it puts the oven at a low temperature, just enough to get the yeast activated and start eating up all the sugars and starches, so it starts building, putting off carbon dioxide or gas so that the yeast or the dough rises. If your oven does not have a proofing setting, one thing I like to do is I'll take my oven, I'll put it down to the lowest temperature, and once it hits that lowest temperature, I'll turn it off and then I'll close it. And that will be my makeshift proofing setting. Okay, it's been a little bit over an hour. Let's go check the dough. Look at that. It's gotten a lot bigger, and I think we're ready to take it out. The dough is done proofing, or at least it's done with its first proof. And one thing I forgot to do is weigh out the dough because I want to cut this into equal pieces. I'm going to make 64 pieces of pandesal today. Tear it out or zero it out. Put it back on. What do we got? 4,367 grams. So we'll just say, hey Siri, what's 4,367 divided by 64?
4,367 divided by 64 is approximately 68.2343.
Okay, there we go. So 68 grams per piece. So let's get started. I know one way you could do is you could do it, roll it in a log and cut it into individual pieces. But I don't trust my eye, so we're just gonna see what 68 looks like. So somewhere between 65 and 68 should be okay. So that's 87. What's that, 74. And then there's 64. So make every piece roughly this size. Might take out a little bit of flour because they are a little bit on the oily side because I oiled the pan, but that's okay. So here we go. Okay, this is more of something I got from pizza. I'm just gonna roll them all up nicely, like this. See right here. Just trying to make them into a nice ball, because after this, I'm gonna cover them in the breadcrumbs, and then go in for a second rise. Second proof. So just like folding them over, making sure the gluten is taut, and then putting it into a nice ball. And then everything will be mostly even. One thing to do if this is taking a while is maybe you want to cover these with like a damp cloth. That way the moisture doesn't escape, but I think I'm doing it fast enough that I'm okay. Just so it doesn't create a crust on the outside. They are starting to get a little bit dry. Moisten another tea towel in warm water. Last step before the final proof, we're just going to take each of these dough balls and roll it around in some breadcrumbs. It will be nice to have these all kind of scrunched up, because once they're all baked, they'll be pull aparts, which is always fun. Time to proof them for another hour to get to double the size. I might have to rotate one of these in a little bit once I put in a third rack. Once the second proof is complete, I preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I bake for 20 minutes, or until about the tops are golden brown. After 10 minutes, or about halfway through the bake, I switched out the trays from top to bottom. In retrospect, I probably would have only baked one tray at a time for a more even baking. Fresh and hot out of the oven. Let's see, any steam? Maybe not, because I've been taking some pictures, but a little bit of steam. I don't know if it's being caught on camera. Man, look at that. Perfect. So, pandesal is good on its own. I don't think anything can beat freshly baked bread out of the oven. So good. My favorite thing to put on pandesal is coconut jam. This is something I just brought back from the Philippines. It is coconut milk that is cooked down slowly with sugar. So in Tagalog, it's known as matamis na bao, or sweet coconut. And in Kapampangan, it's also known as silangan. So let me warm up some of this to put on my bread and try it out. Here it is, cocoa jam spread on the pandesal. It's so rich. I'll probably put too much on there, but perfect combo for me. This is one of the few things I asked to bring back with me from the Philippines to come home, because it's something that you can really only get there. Leave a comment down below with your favorite way to enjoy pandesal. And remember to like and subscribe. Peace!